You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are ladies things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys being with us. As always, remember the Chris Voss Show. Someone loves you but doesn't loan you money, so stop asking. Damn it. We sent you all cards for Christmas, didn't we? I don't know. That's a lot of damn cards. That would have cost a fortune. Anyway, guys, welcome to the big show. As always, we have the smartest people on the show for 16 years, 2,200 episodes, bringing in the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, all of the smartest people to share with their journeys, their stories, their lessons of life, and tools that you can use to make your life better as well. Today, we have Cliff Nonnenmacher on the show with us today. Did I get that right, Cliff?
You did. You nailed it.
I've got all the energy going on from the caffeine that's pulsing through my system. There you go. He's the author of a forthcoming book we'll get into from Forbes. We'll talk about the title and what goes into that here in a second. He began his career as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley. After leaving his Wall Street career in 2003, he acquired a master franchise for New York and Connecticut, diving headfirst into the franchising industry. Since then, he's owned and operated various franchise businesses, including Cartridge World, Personal Training Institute, PureClean, and Made Right, as well as non-franchise companies. He's also developed well-known domestic and international brands like Four Seasons Sunrooms, Contours Express, Island Fin Poke, and Crack Boba. Crack Boba, K-R-A-K.
That's
Boba,
right.
For anyone who I mean, some people really love their boba, I guess.
Oh, they love boba. Absolutely.
Welcome to the show, Cliff. How are you?
Thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here, Chris. Thank you. Love the intro.
Thank you. I should have named the podcast Crack Podcast. K-R-A-K.
Anything works. If you're going to put on a show like this, you can get away with any name.
Yeah. There you go. So give us any .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
I can be found Franocity.com, Franocity.com. We also have a podcast where we only interview founders of franchise brands. That's Pursuit of Profit on all streaming services. And yes, we have a book coming out second quarter. It's Beyond the Brand. And we're excited about that. Yes, we're working with Forbes and lots to talk about.
Beyond the Brand with Forbes. I mean, I've heard of Forbes. They do some interesting things over there. I remember I grew up reading a lot of my father's old books, and he had these old records too, these old sales records from the early Nightingale era, Earl Nightingale. He had records of the
Absolutely.
Some of those early folks, Napoleon Hill, who did Acres of Diamonds and stuff. But I remember something, Alan. But I remember one of the things he had was it was the original Forbes guy who established the Forbes empire back in the day, the great-great-grandfather, I think it was. And he had a book that I read that just was amazing. It was a great book. I should go find that book and reread it because I probably need it at this point. So tell us about your book. Give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside this new book coming out on Forbes.
Yeah, the book is about mainly how to navigate this process, how to overcome fear, right? How to engage properly and do a proper degree of due diligence on a brand. I mean, a lot of people lack discipline when they invest. They don't do an adequate amount of due diligence. They don't speak to the right people. They don't close the loop, if you will, on the due diligence phase. So it just teaches them fear is paralyzing, and fear has killed way more dreams than failure ever will. And a lot of people are just paralyzed. They can't get there. They just can't seem to get to a place where they have the intestinal fortitude to move on, buy the business, execute the model, and hopefully create wealth. And unfortunately, so many people just hold themselves back. So the book is really about fearless franchising, engaging with the right people, looking at the right brands based upon the investor's objectives, right? Not what the brand wants, not what the consultant wants, not what the broker wants, but what you want. Like, what phase of life are you in? What are you willing to invest? What do you need to earn? What's your day-to-day involvement? What are your background and skill sets? Are you an engineer or a salesperson from pharma? Who are you? I just think that the matchmaking process is art and science. And I think the book is really trying to help people just get there in their mind and cope with fear. You wouldn't believe how big of a role fear plays in this whole process that I'm in. I've been doing this 20 years, and I've watched one deal after the other die. And people will never tell you it's fear. Fear manifests itself in all these different ways, typically blaming the spouse who's never on the call or blaming an advisor instead of just saying, I don't believe in me. That's the reality. I don't believe in me to get the job done. Therefore, I'm out. That's sad.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, it's being an entrepreneur is kind of a skill set. I don't think I ever really had a skill for it. I just kind of fell into it and it was sink or swim. So you're just like, well, let's make this work. I'm still trying to do that after 57 years. Learning where you're at, kind of, I suppose, if you're an engineer, you're kind of very left brain, logical reasoning. You may want to hire some creative people to help you balance out, or vice versa. There's a lot that goes into it. So why do you love franchising so much? I mean, that's kind of your brand.
Yes,
You love finding the right businesses for franchising as well. Why is franchising something you prefer? Maybe, I mean, I'm just putting words in your mouth, or assuming, but why do you prefer that over maybe just doing your own startup?
Great question. I don't think any brand hanging their own shingle can, as one location, whether it's an acai bowl place or it's a yoga studio. I just don't think that you can compete with the scale of economy that franchisors bring to the table. I also believe that a person that goes out on their own independently may be more entrepreneurial and have the skill set you were just referring to, where in franchising, if you can just follow a proven system, you don't need to be entrepreneurial. And people always use the word I'm an entrepreneur. If you're a franchisee, you could just be a displaced executive. You could just be someone that always wanted to be self-employed, but maybe doesn't have the business acumen to invent an idea, invent an Uber, invent a new food concept called, Outback or something like that. You don't have to be an inventor. You don't have to be a visionary. You have to want to belong to something larger than one, leverage collective intelligence in a group. That's the beauty of franchising. If you're ever looking for answers to the test, like podcasting, where does Chris Voss go for answers to the test? In many cases, podcasters are alone. They look at other people's success. They try and analyze their success. They try and look at how they position themselves on social media. But in franchising, Chris, I could go call 100 different people across the country, Utah, California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Florida, and say, hey, how are you staffing your managers? Where are you finding people? How are you compensating them? What KPIs did you put in place? Oh, more importantly, what are your cost of goods? My cost of goods are 18%. Wow, mine are 30. No wonder why I'm not profitable. It is amazing how franchising can allow an average investor to collapse time, execute flawlessly, and create wealth. That's my love affair with it. I think it is the fastest way to create wealth without inventing anything.
There you go. And there's more. One of the things I was setting up for is there's that you just said, and there's a higher success rate, right, among franchising as opposed to being an idiot and starting your own thing and like I do.
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, look, you've done very well on your own, right? I mean, there's no one's saying that to become successful, you have to be a franchisee. I know you're kidding. I mean, look, some of the most successful people in the world on the planet, obviously, are not franchisees. Like Elon Musk would not make a good franchisee. He's too entrepreneurial. He would challenge the status quo. He would make several changes before he even acquired the brand. So I think there's a place for everyone, right? There's a place for all of us. You found your spot. I think franchisees find that joining a brand and being part of a large family of people is a great way, again, to achieve your, investment objectives. Why are you here? What are you trying to get out of this experience?
Yeah. And I know franchisees, they, for a lot of the aspects you talked about, they end up taking and being more highly successful. I mean, the failure rate for starting your own company as opposed to doing a franchise business, I mean, it is so much higher for the make it up as you go along business.
It's
Where
a fact.
you mentioned
That's
with
a
franchise,
fact.
I mean, you've got that collective mind. You've got usually a proven product fit. You've got a proven customer base. It's just about replicating at a certain point um, original success, and so you're not redesigning the wheel, as it were. And so for a lot of businesses, especially if you're making something that's kind of unique or innovating a product, it's kind of unique. There's a high amount of risk to it because you have to make it up as you go along. You have to figure it all out, and somebody's already done that work with a franchise.
That's exactly right. It's a business in a box. It's time to execute. Take what they've get. It's a roadmap. They give you a blueprint on how to be successful. I want to touch on something you said. They have proven that you have a lower failure rate being part of a franchise system. They have also proven through data analytics that you get a premium on the exit, which is important. You had a guy on here recently. I want to say it was Scott. Was it Weevil?
Yeah.
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 I mean,
M&A.
you're right. Build a plan with the end in mind. Why did I buy a franchise? I have more liquidity. Why did I buy a franchise? I get a premium on EBITDA over an independent. Sold and
Yeah.
proven. Biz Buy Sell has aggregated all this data and has proven that franchise concepts get a higher multiple than an independent in the same exact industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you.
I just pulled up the stats. 80% of franchises are still operating after 5 years. They have higher survival rates. In contrast, reports about 20% of new businesses fail within the first 2 years. 50% will fail within the first 5 years of the 20% or 80%, I guess, that was left over. So I mean, that's a pretty high failure rate for non-franchise businesses. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you grow up? How did you get the entrepreneurial spirit and bug? And what were some of your influences that got you down this road?
I grew up in Long Island, New York. I knew as early as I can remember I wanted to be self-employed. There was never a question. I just knew that I wanted to be a business owner. Strange, but true. I speak to people all the time. They
Who
have no
hurt you?
clue. Well, I'm sorry.
Who
Who are
hurt
you?
you?
Yeah.
Who hurt you?
No, I love it. I think it's the best life ever lived. I really
It
do.
really is.
It is. I mean, I look at people standing on train platforms at 4:30 in the morning,
Oh,
eking
God.
out barely a six-figure living. And man, because I grew up in New York, so I've seen these people on the train that, by the way, is never going to come, and then get on the train to be harassed by some guy that doesn't have a job. Like, I don't know. I just
Hey,
think
let's
there are
not talk
way
badly
easier
about
ways.
me on trains, okay?
Come on now.
I
So
harass those people on purpose to make sure they appreciate what they have. Or what
that's
little they
it. It puts it all in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a life that I always wanted to live. I was entrepreneurial as young as I can remember. I used to rake golf balls out of ponds and sell them back to
Ah.
golfers, clean them up. I did all the normal things you would do as a kid, right? Whether you're pet sitting or you're raking leaves or you're shoveling snow, whatever I could do to make a buck and get my name out there and just stay busy. And I just loved it. And then I
Yeah.
became an investment banker.
Mhm.
With actually, it was Solomon Smith Barney, that is now Morgan Stanley. You said it right
Mhm.
at the intro, and I ended up becoming a master franchisee, or as they say, franchisor for Cartridge World, and it's an Australian concept. As a
Wow.
master, I scaled about 36 units in New York and Connecticut, sold it, moved to Florida, and then continued my journey as a serial entrepreneur, buying different businesses. In total, 12.
Mhm.
Franchise, non-franchise, a combination of. Created wealth through self-employment and franchising. I love the exit, by the way, because I think the exit is where you make the money. Cash flow
Yeah.
is great, but
Yeah.
when you sell the business you built to someone that doesn't want to build it, there's a premium that gets paid in that process. So I've enjoyed the whole journey. My business partner Justin and I have started by buying failure, which is a true testament, by the way, of franchising. So we started buying failing franchises, blood in the street, outright abysmal failures. And it was like, why would you want to buy this? Because you're not following the model. And we're going to buy it, pay you 10 cents in the dollar, and we're going to follow the model and we're going to sell it for a nosebleed multiple. And that is exactly what we did. And in many cases, we took these businesses from hemorrhaging cash to six-figure net incomes annualized and sold them at a premium, and then kept doing it over and over and over again, which led us, Chris, to creating Phrenosity, which is a franchise consulting company that advises the investor on what they should be looking at based upon their investment objectives, their risk proclivity, their time horizon, right? Their day-to-day involvement. Many people today want to keep their jobs and get a business on the side. So that's what we do now. We do it for free. Nobody believes free, but it's free. We're paid by the seller. We're paid by
Okay.
Our services are 100% free. So for anyone listening that's saying, you know what, I always wanted to explore this, didn't know where to get started right here, because there is zero obligation. And quite frankly, I tell every investor, you are not buying a franchise, zero expectation of buying. Just engage and see, is franchising an investment vehicle for you? It's just another asset class, Chris, right?
Yeah.
There's art, there's stocks, there's bonds, there's mutual funds, there's real estate, there's franchising, there's crypto. We're another asset class that should be investigated.
There you go. And I've met people over the years, like with our mortgage company, I remember one guy came in and he was very left brain. He was a math teacher. And so, everything had to follow rules and formulas. And I remember he came in and he wanted to take out a huge equity line to start his own business after being a teacher in math for 40, 50 years. He was about my age probably. And he retired, I guess. And I remember telling him, I go, I'm really concerned about what you're doing here, because I don't know that you have the creative mind to be your own entrepreneur and just do your own thing. There's a lot of times I've met people and I'm just like, I think it's great you want to own your own company, but this is a learned skill and you can burn a lot of money learning this skill.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, trying to master the roulette wheel in Vegas.
Right. Right. Yeah. You thought student loans were bad, right? Take an SBA loan.
Wins. Yeah. The house always wins. And so franchising is so much more easier because it's almost turnkey, right?
Pretty much. Think about every area of starting the business, right? Let's start with site selection. Done. They already know what a sustainable market looks like. Let's call it a 3-mile radius, 40,000 houses making 75 grand a year, household income. Check that box, right? So it's like, well, what size? Well, we don't want to exceed 1,200 square feet. Keep going. What else? It's all laid out. What about the architect? Done. Have one. Site selection, real estate negotiation, already in-house. How about the grand opening support? We're going to start the grand opening once you sign your lease and the place on. So yes, everything is designed and everything is laid out in that blueprint, that roadmap for the buyer. Again, execution is everything. I think execution is everything, regardless of franchising.
Yeah.
And I am amazed at how many people really can't follow a proven system. They can't follow basic instructions. Just look at society. It's like, really?
Yeah.
I always scratch my head and I'm like, man, like that's pretty basic. You didn't even get that fundamental down. So in franchising, it's all about execution.
Definitely. I can see on your website, you offer several consulting services, finding a franchise opportunity that's right for you, franchise agreement review, make sure that, I like that, you review it before you sign. There can be some pitfalls in franchising where, I don't know what they all are. You probably have a better feel than I do. But I'm just going to toss it to you. What are some pitfalls in franchising? Sometimes they want you to redesign the whole building every year or something. Like, hey, we got a new lookout, and you're like, we have to buy new signage and new logos and everything. And we're like, we just did that like 2 years ago, didn't we? I don't know. There's some places I see, like fast food places that you're like, Jesus, how do you keep up?
Right. You're right. Those comments are brick and mortar. Right. So those are going to be your retail, physical location brands that are going to put language in there. Not every year. I understand what you were saying. Not every year. Yeah. Maybe within the decade, because most franchise agreements are 10 years with an option to renew. And maybe on that renewal, the brand says, hey, your sign still says Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, we haven't used that name in many, many years. We're KFC now. after fried became a very bad word many, many years ago.
Ah.
So brands true up, right? Look at TWA and Trans World Air and look at Pan Am and all these brands. They were very geographic specific. Look at Southwest Airline. It's
Oh, yeah.
like, do you do more than the Southwest? Yeah. Sometimes there's an unintended consequence to the name of a business. So the brands want the ability at some point in the future to true up the system to make sure they're not using legacy technology. But you asked specifically about pitfalls. I think some of the pitfalls that people choose brands that really are not developed enough and don't have proof of concept. Be very careful looking at brands with a handful of locations, especially if it's in a specific geography. A brand that's successful in Manhattan, that doesn't say anything to me that it's going to work in Naples, Florida, or, or Houston, or like, these are certain outlier markets that have a massive humanity, a ton of discretionary spending.
Yeah.
Will that model work in these other middle America areas? So I think that's one issue. Poorly written franchise agreements need to be reviewed by attorneys. We don't let anyone purchase a franchise without a full legal review. Another issue I see with people is they're undercapitalized. They really did not run a proper pro forma or projections in the business. And they end up opening and they're like, what do you mean I need operating capital? It's like, you needed $300,000 to open the business. Now you need to keep the lights on, pay rent, pay staff, cost of goods, advertise. So I think a lot of people really shorten their runway of success by being really grossly undercapitalized. These are the things that we address as consultants to make sure that our clients don't end up a statistic, because I don't want to see anyone fail.
Yeah, and most franchisees, they're set up to have a great support team. Having for me, any company I've ever started, there's very few people I can call for help. Usually, the only people I can call for help are my competitors, and they're not going to give me.
That's
the
right.
answers. Hey, we're trying to figure out how to square this, how to round off this square, get this widget to work. Can you tell me how you made yours work?
That's right. Yeah, good luck.
Click. Hello.
Right.
But if you've got, and then of course, like you said, the collective brain. If you've got 3,500 offices or units producing, if you're like, I'll just throw an example, a Subway. Somebody figures out how to, I don't know, cut the meats thinners and save 5%, which is a lot of money over time and volume. Or somebody figures out, I don't know, some sort of innovation. You've got a collective mind there that's huge. I remember I used to sit at my when we first started our one company. It was me and my business partner and our first employee sitting around going, "How do we innovate?"
Right.
That was our collective mind.
That's
It was
right.
The three of us in a 10 by 10 office, and so yeah, it's much important to have those sort of feedback and stuff that you can get. You've got several resources. There's an E2 visa. What is that?
We have a lot of folks that, and you're seeing this with AI, like there are trends in my industry, and a trend we're seeing right now is that AI is finding its way in corporate America. And a lot of these people that were brought over here on visas are out of a job. So a work visa does not translate if you're no longer working, for Amazon or Microsoft, because you've been replaced by AI. So a lot of folks want to stay. They have family. They have children here. They want to get an E2 visa, purchase a business, and there's some requirements there.
Oh, really?
It's not a huge portion of our business, but it's significant enough, especially, as I said, when things are trending in America a certain way, it ends up enough being a resource, and we have people internally dedicated just to that.
There you go. And you've got the Pursuit of Profit podcast that you probably
That's
give
right.
advice for. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Pursuit of Profit has quickly become one of the most popular pods in franchising. It's high level. It's only interviewing founders of franchise brands. And we have a deep dive into how they got started, unit economics, the cost to acquire, how they acquire customers, right? Length of stay, the staffing model, just margin, everything. It's so I think prospective investors that, kind of listen in, a lot of times people would say, I would never, ever have thought of being involved in that business. But after hearing that founder and that conversation, I like to speak to them. It happens all the time. Again, like you, the show is a resource to add value to our client base that they can listen in with windshield time in the car. I think podcasting is one of the greatest mediums ever created. I mean, to be able to listen to some of the folks you bring on the show for free, absolute for free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and in many cases, unedited. These people are very candid. Like,
Well,
look at Hugh. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Well, we sent invoices to all the audience, and they just never paid them. So that's why.
It's a great resource.
It's a lot of mail that we sent invoices to. But no, it's you're right. There's great stuff in podcasting what we could do there. So why should you use a franchise consultant like yourself to purchase a franchise? I notice one other thing you also do is you give consulting on franchising your business if you have one as well.
That's right. Yeah, matter of fact, right before this call, I was having a conversation with a guy that, created a concept out in California, and the headwinds in California and how and it's like, listen, we've become pretty good at hedging California risks. I mean, the risks right now are unprecedented, and my heart goes out to these folks, what's going on in California. But just speaking about business in California, there were headwinds prior to fires. It's just a business unfriendly state. And it doesn't mean you don't do business. It means that you learn and align yourself with professionals that know how to hedge, mitigate, and overcome some of these risks. And we've been, quite frankly, masterful at dealing with California, whether it's supply chain risk, rent risk, labor risk. I mean, they have employees in fast food making $20 an hour as a starting conversation. I mean, he's like the worst governor ever. He's not trying to build anything. Obviously, he's not trying to build anything. It's just bizarre what goes on. Every decision out there, I feel like it's missiles and missiles defense. And California is a very large part of our practice, very large part. It's highly populated, has a ton of capital, right? It's a beautiful state. Say what you want, but it's a beautiful state. I'm very critical of it because I don't like the business risks in California.
Yeah, hopefully they'll look at. I mean, they've got right now, for those of you watching this 5 to 10 years from now on YouTube, we're at January 2025. We just had a horrific fire, the Santa Ana winds, and wiped out large parts of LA and LA. Let's put it as LA. But hopefully they're going to look at some of their building codes, maybe their business codes. They're talking, about how things need to be streamlined so that things can get back to normal sometime in the next 5 years. But it's a crazy thing. But you need an analyst like yourself to analyze these wins, right? You
can't do this alone. I don't recommend it. There's 4,000 brands in this country, approximately 4,000.
Wow.
Most of them are not worth buying. Most of them have razor thin margin. I'm being candid. Yeah. Right? That's the beauty of working for the client for free. There's no BS. It's like, look, I'm working for free. Let's tell the truth. Let's get you level set. Most brands are not worth buying. They have razor thin margins. I wouldn't get out of bed for less than 15, 20% net to the bottom line. Most brands don't align with the investor's objectives, whether it's income, like you mentioned, Subway. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to talk. Subway makes like 30 to 50 grand a year net. It's a horrible business.
Oh, really?
You have to own oh, goodness. Horrible. Razor thin margin. You can't make it. Well, here's the unintended consequence of a $5 footlong. You can't make any money with a $5 footlong. When you're in an inflationary environment like we've been in, how are you making money do it? So they had to quickly pull that ad. That doesn't work anymore. And now they're trying to charge $7, $8 for a $5 item. Right? I mean, it's like the dollar store. The dollar store as a brand name and a concept never thought about inflation. Because when you go into a dollar store today, it's actually a $1.30 store. It's a $2 store. It's now a $3 store. These are and these stores are closing left and right, as you know. I mean, you could look it up. Dollar stores getting the crap kicked out of them.
Yeah.
And for that reason, look, there's consequences to naming your company a certain way and not forecasting inflation.
That $5 footlong, that was such a what would you call it? A mnemonic. Was it mnemonic? It was such a they locked. It's like the baby back ribs from Chili's. They hammered the shit out of the advertising on it.
They did.
Point that, and now if you go in there, you're like, whoa, where's this $5 footlongs I always heard about these last 20 years of marketing? And it's This is freaking crazy. But so you need people. There's 4,000 of those brands in the U.S. You need to have someone kind of help you narrow those down and probably market fit. I don't know if market fit's the right word. Customer or owner fit, right? If you're an owner, there are certain things you gotta try and find and love. Like we talk a lot about this on the show, mainly because a lot of my early companies I didn't really love. I really wasn't passionate about them. I was passionate about running them and innovating and making money off them, and just the challenge of it. But a lot of them, in the end, after time, I just wasn't waking up for excited to go to work. And you think that you make a lot of money, it makes all the difference in the world. It doesn't. And so, finding something you're passionate about, something that you love, showing up for work every day is probably another fit that you need to have in franchising, right?
Yeah, that's a great statement. So when I'm working with a client that is a capitalist, it's obviously easier because now
Mhm.
it just comes down to unit economics and
Mhm.
appeal to the capitalist within them. When the person comes to us and says, "I've spent a career in law and I never liked it, I hated it. The next gig, I need to love," and I put emphasis on love, what I do.
Yeah.
It's a very check because now it's emotion based, it's feelings, it's emotions. It's way more challenging. But
Mhm.
then, you made a comment before too that reminded me of a lot of the things that we deal with in this business, which is a lot of investors will love a brand, but they
Yeah.
will not love and they do not have the skill set required to build it.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how many people will love, let's say, signage. They want to make signage for Burger King and, they want to make corporate neon channel letter, box signs, that type of signage.
Mhm.
And it's like, how do you feel about networking? Oh man, my hands sweat at the thought of it. It's like, how do you feel about selling and cold calling? They're like, no, I'm an engineer. Like I'm a software engineer. I love the CAD, I love the design, I love all the technical aspects of owning a signage company. Yeah, but you don't like one thing that required to build it. And
Mhm.
you could always see these disconnects, and that's what we advise these folks on. And again, the answer isn't don't look at signage. The answer is you need to put up more money now because now you need to hire a salesperson. Your labor cost just went up
Yeah.
because you're going to hire the skill sets you don't have. So the answer isn't always just walk away, look at something else. It's be realistic. You're not a salesperson. You're a social introvert that hid in a cubicle for the first 40 years of your career, right?
Yeah.
You don't even really like people, but yet you want to be in a business to business
A people
enterprise.
business.
It's kind of weird, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We see it all the time with the
Yeah.
engineers. They're everywhere. And these people are being displaced at an astounding rate with AI. Like you
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
believe it. It's crazy what's
Yeah.
happening. I'm seeing
It's
it.
crazy. It'll be interesting, and there might be some franchising opportunities. I don't know in AI. One thing you talk about is people investing in real estate or investing in franchising versus real estate agents, or real estate, I should say, in franchise versus real estate. Talk to us about some of that. And I guess real estate agents make good franchise investors or
Yeah.
franchisees.
Yeah. So when you look at when I'm working with a client, it's like, what brings you to us? I need to
Mm-hmm.
generate additional income.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, Chris, you've seen this front row. We went from single family head of household, dual income. Now we need a third income stream. So you got two
Pretty much,
people
yeah.
living in a house raising kids that now need a third income. I mean,
That's why I'm
and
a
where do they get it?
polygamist. That's why I'm a
Right. Yeah.
polygamist
And
now. I need
there's
more.
one. There you go. I'd never brought that to the table. There's one solution to that problem: multiple income streams,
Yeah, you get
multiple
the
people.
multiple income streams.
That's
Just
right.
got to have more wives.
Right. So we advise them. It's like, well, what are you looking at? Well, we were going to do an Airbnb. It's more passive. And then they go on about real estate. Airbnbs right now are getting annihilated. And I think everyone knows what's going on in real estate right now. When
Mm.
you look at the cap rate, when you look at the return, and you look at the cash intensity of doing a deal like real estate, it's a massive investment. I don't care where you live. Real estate's expensive. You're either going into debt or you're putting up a ton of cash.
Yeah.
When you compare a real estate transaction and an annualized tenant compared to a small business, generating X revenue, 15, 20%, margin,
Hmm.
by any measuring stick, the franchise is going to outperform the real estate play. And the reason that you made the comment about the realtors, the reason why I do like realtors to look at franchising is that think about all the components in a home when you touch a home. You have roofing, you have siding, you have window replacement, you have window treatments, you have paint, you have junk removal, you have landscaping, you have tree trimming, electrical, plumbing, like, my God, my head's about to explode with all of the spokes on the hub. When you just say house to me, right? There's restoration, there's water, fire, mold, and biohazard. There's all sorts of issues that go on with a structure. Realtors are touching these homes multiple times a day. They're also telling people to have the home inspected before they buy it. Well, own a home inspection company or be invested in one. Or what is the number one, number two thing on a home inspection report? Roofing issues always. I mean, unless the house is new, there's a roofing issue. There's a cracked tile. There's asphalt issues. There's a gutter issue. There's an issue up in the roof. And every home in America has drywall. There's always drywall repair issues. Corner bead
Mold.
popping off, nail pops galore, right? Think about the doorknobs that went through the wall, an angry son that put his fist through the wall. There's always something going on with drywall in America. Be in that business. You know, like, you could recapture a lot of revenue that realtors just keep giving away.
Yeah.
That's why I like realtors to just, own little side gigs.
There you go. And the nice thing about franchisees is just, I guess, depending upon the one you can get into, a lot of it will run itself, right? You don't have to, be so much in the day to day. You can hire the people around you to do it, and the job description's already there, the manual's already there. You just pop them right in, away you go, I guess.
Great. So not as easy as you described, right?
So I make it sound so simple, don't it?
You do. I love you for it. It's definitely a heavier lift than the way you described it. However, you bring up a good point. Most people come to us and say, I want to buy a business. And then let's just say we bring up dog grooming. The investor immediately reacts and says, I don't want to groom animals. Good. Because the franchisor doesn't want you grooming dogs either.
Oh.
Right? So think about this. When someone purchases or investigates a franchise, just investigate the fundamentals of the business. No one wants you cutting hair. No one wants you grooming dogs. No one wants you standing on a roof or cutting trees. They want you to work on the business, not in the business. This is a really big issue with people where they tend to only look at things that they're willing to do. Think about all your investments. Like, if, let's just say you're invested in, bio, some pharma. It doesn't mean, like, you would not work for these companies, but you'll make investments in them. Maybe it's Berkshire Hathaway entities or something. Maybe it's now we're talking about quantum computing. Chris, you and I are probably not doing quantum computing, but we'll invest in it. People need to look at franchising the same way. No one wants you doing the work. Because if you actually wanted to do the work, all you're doing is buying a job. Jobs require day-to-day involvement. I like to invest in businesses that do not require my day-to-day involvement, because that's called a job. I want to buy a business enterprise that I'm going to hire people and I'm going to manage my managers and hold them accountable for the execution of the business. So thanks for bringing that up. So important.
Yeah, it really is. And if you're not, I'm a CEO. Leader type, alpha, I never shut up. And I used to be an introvert. That's the funny part, when I was a kid. But, and so I'm used to doing that. But, being an integral part of the company, knowing how everything works, being involved and stuff, it's a lot of work that you have to do. And so being able to, kind of operate as an investor, like you said, oversee the company, see what's going on. There's kind of a CEO guy who does the franchise for, whatever the company is back at headquarters. That can make all the difference in the world, in your workflow and what you have to deal with. And, you've got somebody kind of inspiring the company. You just have to make sure you have a good relationship with your employees. That's kind of important. But you're right. It has a higher success rate. I think I don't want to make it sound easy again, because business is never easy. But it has an easier turnkey than trying to reinvent the wheel out of whole cloth.
That's right.
We're just like, let's make a business out of nothing. All right, this sounds fun. Let's go through this.
That's right. It's a way easier path.
Yeah, and then you're right with the exit. If you own, just kind of throw some stuff out here. McDonald's, Subway, KFC. If you own something that has a brand name like that, like you mentioned, the 4,000 brands, that has probably a higher sell than buying the Chris Voss Show podcast.
Right. Right.
People are like,
A lo-
what? What is it? And the brand recognition that those brands have are much more higher profile. Plus,
Definitely.
it's a little hard to do the Chris Voss Show if you buy it off me because I won't be on it anymore.
That's right. It's name specific.
It's name specific. We kind of fucked that one up, but I love what I do, so that's all. And loving what you do, going back to what we were mentioning too, is so important. I've talked to that ad nauseum on the show. I'm sure my audience is rolling eyes now, but loving what you do is so important, man. Especially when you own your own business or a franchise, where you got to show up for business. Showing up every day can be a real challenge, but when you're passionate, when you're doing something you love, getting up and go doing your thing, just makes all the difference. I mean, I my podcast is the only business I've ever fallen in love with. That I love doing it, and part of it is because I love interviewing people, I love talking to people, I love hearing their journeys, their stories. I'm a story collector by nature. I guess I'm some sort of weird griot. So as we go out, give people a final pitch out on to how they can reach out to you, how they get to know you better. One question maybe you can fulfill is, do they need to have a certain amount of net worth, or do you figure all that stuff out and what they can afford to buy, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that for the folks listening, if you're considering franchising, you need to have the willingness to invest at least 100 cash of your own liquidity, no loan. Borrowing right now is very expensive. I really don't want to see clients borrowing too much. A little is fine, but the rates are high at the SBA. So I do want people to come to the table with an adequate amount of capital. So I think 100, if you're willing to part with 100, you're in a good spot. Most brands look for liquidity of 150, and they're looking for a net worth of 350, 500. Again, it depends on the brand, but I'm just speaking in general, terms with you. If they wanted to explore this with no obligation and obviously free, they could reach out to me at cliffn@phrenosity.com. That's FRANOCITY.com. And if they wanted to, a lot of people don't want to engage. They want to wait and see. If you want to listen to the pod, it's Pursuit of Profit, co-hosted by my business partner, Justin Guevara. And I think that just reaching out to me directly or visiting our site, they could also request information through the site. Love, this is what we do. We help people. 20 years of doing this, 12 brands. Love helping people in this, process.
It doesn't cost you anything to get an initial consultation and find out what's a
Nothing,
fit for you.
ever.
Or if you want to, you've got a great idea yourself and you've got a great business model, it's working great for you, and you want to franchise it. That's another big thing. One thing I'll throw in, I meant to throw in, is, with you mentioned about real estate and the difference between franchising as a business opportunity and investing in real estate. I think investing in real estate is going to become much harder over the next while with what went on with these fires. I mean, over the last couple of years, home owners insurance companies have been pulling out of Florida,
That's right,
Texas, and California because they're just tired of all the stuff we're seeing with climate change, and I think nationwide that's going to affect. I think more and more nationwide we're going to see fallout from that, where we're going to see. I mean, just looking at the cost of 10,000 plus homes being wiped and stuff, and more often we're having these climate events. I think everyone's home owner's insurance is going to go up over time. I mean, it certainly has happened in the car business, so I don't see why.
I'm in Florida and I'm feeling it. I've been here since 1988. I left for a little while for Cartridge World in New York, but the premiums, I mean, there's now subsidized by the state of Florida. We have Citizens, which is a state-run, carrier, is subsidized by the state. So I agree with you. And all these folks, they're going to end up with you. A lot of the Californians end up in Utah. I just purchased a place
That's true, actually.
out by you.
That's true. Yeah. They're probably gonna flood Vegas some more. Goddamn it, too. Vegas is their home. But yeah, Utah. There's gonna be there's gonna be moving to think because people are just gonna give up. There's gonna be like 3 years of code regulations
Right.
trying to get my
Exactly.
thing. They only get 2 years of money usually, I think, from the homeowners insurance I was hearing. And so, yeah, a lot of people are going to maybe move. A lot of people are already kind of migrating. Like my friends in San Francisco said, a bunch of the people from Pacific Palisades are up there in hotels, filling up hotels and
Wow.
everything. And they kind of just don't want to be in the area for this short term because they lost everything, number one, so there's nothing to go back to. But it's going to be just a cluster f of rebuilding and contractors, and I mean, I feel sadly for everyone, and I had friends that lost like everything, and
I
and
know.
they
It's
didn't even
sad.
grab shit when they left the house. A couple of my friends, the power went out, and they needed to make some calls, and I think their phone calls went down, and so they needed to make some business calls, and so they just kind of left, not grabbing hard drives or computers or anything of value, thinking, what's the worst that can happen? So, some smoke, and they lost everything. So, yeah, I think there's going to be that migration. I think being in real estate, you saw in Florida when that. I think one of the things that really impacted Florida was when that condo collapsed, right?
That's right.
And they started looking at all the other condos and their coding and regulations. They're like, holy
That's
shit,
right.
there's a whole lot more of these running around. And I've seen people in Florida, they've been getting these notices with their condo associations or their HUDs. Not their HUDs, their housing housing
HOAs.
development, their HOAs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
thank you.
HOAs. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think being in business is going to be more fruitful over the long term. Of course, I don't know, man. I should have bought a house at the bottom of after the 2008 crash and didn't. So, what an idiot I am.
Mm.
Well, it's been very insightful to have you on the show. Thank you for coming by. We
Thank
really appreciate it.
thank you, Chris. I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Ernest, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/. Chris Voss. Oh, and Cliff, let's get a plug in for that book real quick. Give us the title of that. And
So,
people
right,
can
we're
hear about it.
January 25. We should release it second quarter of 25. It's called Beyond the Brand, a guide for fearless franchising. So, Beyond the Brand.
There you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/. Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/. Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and Chris Voss, Facebook.com. And we'll see you guys next time.